know, the 5 minute time and then the 1 minute time, you know, that kind of thing. Okay.
Fancy sign.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen, whatever time you're tuning in the program here. This is a special program at FLINTTalkRadio.com. I'm George Moss, and we're going to be talking this afternoon for about 30 minutes with Mr. Tom Whitmire, and he is a candidate for the congressional seat now being held by Mr. Dan Kildee.
Correct.
And so we're very glad to have you in the studio, and we're going to be talking here about his campaign and hopefully bringing some enlightenment to you about the aspect of it, which is quite different, because he is bringing a nutritional element to the political arena. So, Mr. Whitmire, I want to thank you for coming into the studio, and I'm sure we're going to learn something about your campaign and what you're bringing to the table.
Well, thank you. Aloha to everybody. I'm running for U.S. Representative in the 5th District as a Republican candidate. So the 5th District encompasses all of Genesee County.
Mm-hmm.
It misses Frankenmuth, it gets Saginaw, Bay City, and then goes up through Aranac and Iosco County.
Okay. We were talking off the air about your campaign, which is nutritionally based, and I was very interested in what you were saying about that. Why don't you tell the listening audience about?
So I'm running on a platform of nutrition, health, agriculture, and education.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have a real disconnect in this area about what is real food, and we need to start providing solutions to our people and providing them other options. So at FLINT Talk Radio, we're in Genesee County. Genesee County is known as the second most unhealthy county in the state of Michigan.
Is that right?
So if we're going to start addressing our problems, I think we need to start there.
Okay. It's like you're saying, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
That's correct.
Everything starts with health. Well, how would you say then that would play into the political arena? We mostly think about fiduciary issues like finance and the economy and things like that. I don't think I've ever heard a politician say that we should start at 0.1, which is the nutrition, which I would agree that's a major aspect. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Correct.
To work from. So what made you jump into being a nutritionist? What made you jump into the political arena?
The first thing I saw, what got me started, as I was like any typical American, I was eating a lot of high fatty foods, a lot of sugar, a lot of chemicals, and I just thought that the stomach area was something I had to fill 3 times a day. I didn't realize that what I ate and what I drank made a difference in how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Then I fell off a mountain bike just on a relaxing little cruise, and I fractured my clavicle, broke into 5 different pieces. And it was that time, after 30 years, it's the first time I actually looked and said, wow, there's chemicals in our food that shouldn't be in here. I'm consuming high fructose corn syrup, I'm consuming aspartame, MSG, high amounts of fats, highly processed sugars. What is going on? So in my investigation, led to the food industry, was then got into the political system of why is this being allowed in our food when we can obviously see that the people are the ones that are paying the price for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have, even in Genesee County, we have a high rate of obesity, we have a high rate of malnutrition even,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and we have a high rate of type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
And I think if we're going to start anywhere, we need to address that. And the way we can address that is start educating people about living a healthy lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
and then providing them solutions to that and providing them options.
I see. I think that would be one way of actually interfacing what you're running on your campaign with the healthcare issue, because if you are going to lower the healthcare costs, you've got to do some preventative things. You can't wait till you get sick and then try to intervene where it's more expensive. You can do the preventative things. You can cut down on the cost. That was a thing that happened. That was something that was reported a couple of weeks ago about there being some plastic in the bread put out by Subway. And I was thinking to myself at that time that everything has plastic in it. What do you think you're eating when you hear that little crunch sound? And you can't produce food in the laboratory. Food grows, there are 5 things about food. It grows, crawls, runs, swims, or flies. And if it doesn't do any of those things, then it's not food, it's plastic.
So we're feeding our kids highly processed, pre-packaged, foods, and we're doing that in our schools. So if we're going to start anywhere, we need to start educating our young people in our schools, and then we need to start getting real food into the schools.
Okay.
So right now, Michigan has gone away from growing a lot of agricultural products that we can feed to our kids. We used to grow a lot of asparagus, a lot of celery, still have the ability to grow a lot of apples, blueberries, as we know, cherries, high amounts of crops that we can grow in our fields. What we need to start doing is allowing those foods to get into our schools. And there's a lot of legislation that's blocking that ability.
Okay.
So we don't need to legislate against other corporations having their products, but we need to educate people about there is another alternative, and then allow those products to get into our schools and our institutions.
I see. Well, how would that differ from what Michelle Obama is doing?
Michelle Obama has a big fitness craze. It's not all about fitness, about activating your body. It's actually, a lot of it's providing your body with nutrients, and then actually allowing your body to detox chemicals. So what we have right now is we have kids that are showing up at school. They're being provided this highly processed meal. They're only allowing about $1.52 to go to the lunches. So the kids are taking in chemicals, and they may be allergic to the gluten, they may be allergic to dairy, they may be allergic to the GMOs, the stuff that their body's not used to. Then they go to class, and they have this disconnect, and they have this fogginess, and they're not able to respond because they have a lot of chemicals in their body.
Wow.
What's happening to our kids at this point is that they're being diagnosed as having a learning disability. They're having a label put onto them, and they're being sent to a doctor. And a lot of times the quickest solution is to give them a pharmaceutical medication, as opposed to saying, well, maybe you need a little asparagus here and a little avocado there. They're saying you need this chemical, and you may be on it for the rest of your life. And what's happening with people in all ages, especially in our area from the research, is that they're losing their passion for life. So they're kind of been put on this drug. They used to be good at the cello, the piano, mathematics, science. They used to have this passion. All of a sudden, they're losing their passion. They're starting to drop through and fall through the cracks. So what happens is we don't have a highly skilled workforce that's ready to work because they're very unhealthy.
So this orientation that we're seeing now in these schools, and all that dysfunctionality you're saying is a nutritionally based disorientation and dysfunctionality caused by the nutritional needs and so on.
Correct.
So how would okay, so let's say you go to Washington and we have 434 others who are not nutritionally directed because they run their campaign on the normal things, the usual things, which is I get out there and try to create a fraud to your opponent.
That's exactly.
But what would you do once you get to Washington and this is your platform to in fact change the orientation is what you're saying, because we're not orientated toward the things you're saying at this point. How would you do that in Washington given the mindset already in place in the nation's capital?
Let's start with this. A lot of the problems and the reason we don't have solutions is because of special interest groups and lobbyists. And the politicians are worrying about getting the next campaign contribution and putting money maybe in their pockets or in the pockets of others. And they're bowing to the lobbyists and special interest groups.
I didn't know that.
That's what we can't have happen. So one of the main goals and reasons that we have a Congress is to legislate, but what most people forget about, they also have a role to investigate.
Investigate, okay.
So you'll hear congressional hearings and they'll bring somebody in and you have to testify, and then they have a congressman who's investigating. Where I excel and thrive at is in that investigative process. And I think we need to start having a voice. So when a bill comes up and we're talking about health and we're talking about nutrition, we're talking about education, and we're talking about agriculture, somebody's got to be there to say, listen, I've actually investigated this subject and I want to give you my perspective.
Okay.
And maybe the perspective's the same as big business, big agriculture, big milk, big dairy, who have a ton of lobbyists, but maybe it's different. We don't need to legislate against these big corporations, these big conglomerates, and these big lobbyists, but we do need to not prevent the other corporation, the other idea, or the other alternative from having a means. And I think that's where our disconnect is.
I see.
So instead of going into an industry and saying, we need to make this industry, well, it's called the poultry industry. We need to make this industry incredibly safe. We need to make sure that all the birds are, safe and in good conditions. Instead of saying that's what we need to do, right now we have a system that just says, what we should do is just make it illegal to take pictures of these facilities, to take any video, to create any documentaries or any articles that may show the American people how our food system actually works.
I see.
And we have this huge disconnect. So I want to stand up and say, here's an alternative perspective. Here's a solution that nobody's thought of. Let's talk about implementing this.
Mm-hmm. I see. I think that would be a good approach to it, because what I see Obamacare doing, for example, is driving a lot of the medical practitioners out of the medical field, and so you have a downsizing of the number of person that's producing the care, and you get people not the sickness not being reduced. So you have the
Exactly.
So we got to have something that intervenes, so that if we're going to have a downsizing of the medical practitioners, you have to then decrease the number of persons that are going to get sick. And what you're saying here is that you will take the bull by the horn and begin to deal with the preventative aspects of it, which is quite the approach you have to have in those circumstances. It's quite interesting that you're coming off of that nutritional aspect. Now, you're saying that you had this trauma, this medical condition yourself, which led you to that. What led you to jump into the political arena?
I think this is my calling, so it's the spiritual path that I've been put on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at a point in my life where I'm able to stand up and be a voice that can speak the truth. And I think that a great leader is also creating other leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to say, I want to create a following. What I want to do is inspire other leaders to stand up as well.
I see.
So I started this process to where I am today by having to gather signatures.
Mm-hmm.
So I got over 1,500 signatures. In the process, 1,000 of those signatures I either gathered myself or the person standing next to me got. So I got to meet 1,000 of these people, and every one was a small interview. So I've already had a small interview by about 1,000 people, and they want to ask questions. And a lot of them would just, look at the top of the petition and say, "Oh, you're a Republican. I'm not voting for you."
Mm-hmm.
I say, "No, I'm a human being. I'm running on the Republican ticket."
Mm-hmm.
And that would stop them, and they wanted to listen because they
wanna
hadn't heard
engage in
anything about that more.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, "Well, I'm a Democrat, and I'm not going to sign that." And I said, "Well, I'm running on a platform of nutrition, health, agriculture, and education."
Mm-hmm.
And I say, "I think we have a huge disconnect about what is real food, and if people are sick." And they're like, "Yeah, I can get into that. What do you think about GMOs?" And I tell them the truth of what I thought about different aspects, and all of a sudden the people were gathering this, this is what we need to do. This makes a difference, and they grab my petition and go, "I'll sign that."
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you about what would be your point of entry, knowing that you're in a Democratic Party stronghold, Genesee County being that. And you said your district, the 5th district, it encompasses, you tell us the area.
Genesee County, Saginaw County, Bay, Iosco, Aronoque,
Any of those
and Tuscola.
Any of those Republican strongholds? We know the Democratic Party stronghold of Genesee County is pretty much that. So any of those, I know you're saying that you are not running in that partisan manner.
Correct.
But partisanship is a factor in the political process.
Correct.
So is there any Republican partisanism that's in place in some of the other places?
You can judge it by looking if people just vote straight tickets. So if a candidate doesn't even run, they don't put out a single sign, they don't do a single interview, they just paid their $100 to get on the ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they get between 30 and 36% of the vote
Mm-hmm.
in this area. But I think when we start looking at the Republican or Democrat, we're creating a disconnect between what the actual issues that we're talking
I agree
about.
with you 1,000%.
And we need to start creating unity
Mm-hmm.
in our community.
Sure. And I think politics is too often at times divisional on purpose, because they want to run on party labels and not run on the issues in the campaigns. I'm with you 1,000% on that point. It still is an issue to be dealt with, though, in terms of how the county has played out in the past. And if you got a D behind your name, people are kind of like in lockstep with that's a ticket that you're going to vote for. And there has to be some way to break that cycle so we can get better government And I think that's what you're saying in terms of how you run your campaign. I think it's a wonderful approach, Tom, that you are running on health, nutrition, education, and agriculture. I don't think I've ever seen a campaign with those four items at the top of the campaign strategy.
Well, let me touch on agriculture for a little bit and
All right.
explain what that aspect means and what my research has shown in my investigation. Being in this industrial age area, and we can specifically just talk about Genesee County today. We're in Flint Talk Radio. What happened is General Motors opened up the factories. So all the farmers left their farms and started to work in the factories.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that farmland was just left to hobby farming, or it may have just laid dormant.
Mm-hmm.
When the giant monocropping boom came across the nation, and they were just wiping out the family farms, putting in these large corporations so they could just drive one tractor for miles. They were using a lot of pesticides, they're using a lot of fertilizers, and they're using a lot of genetically modified, genetically engineered seeds.
Mm-hmm.
What has happened is that this area's land has remained untouched.
This area's land here.
Yeah, so anywhere from Iosco to Genesee County, we still have real farmland. So if you drive, you'll see a house, and then there's a field behind it, and there's a barn, and there's a tractor.
Okay.
The way that farming is meant to be.
Right.
So that's an untouched resource. We have quality, high quality soil that they don't have in the rest of the nation. And what we need to do is start taking advantage of that and start planting plants again, like celery and asparagus, and these plants that we can grow. We can get into our own institutions.
Mm-hmm.
But what we also can take advantage of is that we sit on the best logistical system and the best supply chain system in the country.
Mm.
So we've been shipping cars around the world. We have maybe 4 major railroads that come into this area. They drive right through the factories. We have loading docks. So if we were producing high quality food products, and we can say local, we can say organic, whatever the standard is, then we can start shipping, we can start feeding our own people, and we can start shipping high quality foods around this country as well.
Wow. Tom, you are actually doing some thinking, and that's something that we need more in the political process. I'm really fascinated by what you're saying. I had never thought about the virgin land and how what the agriculturalists, these large conglomerates, want to do is to have land for miles and miles, and as you said, we can drive a tractor from one end to the other.
Yes.
And cultivate in a large basis, using modified seeds and things of that sort. And what we're doing really at the feed source is eating plastic even at that source.
Correct.
The seeds are being modified.
So we're growing a lot of genetically modified soy and a lot of genetically modified corn in this country. And every day that we don't stand up and say we need to start growing real food, then we lose a little bit of that advantage. And what's happening is other countries are saying we no longer want genetically modified foods in our country because we don't trust them. And we don't want to use our population as guinea pigs or test subjects. So a lot of other major countries are slowly starting to ban those products.
Produced in this country.
Yeah, they won't let the United States export those products to their country. So in Michigan's 5th district, if we were to be the first ones to say, okay, we're going to go away from genetically modified seeds, we're going to go back to heirloom and organic and the real seeds that used to thrive in our area, then we would be well ahead of the curve, and we'd be creating jobs, and we would be putting our people to work, and our people would be healthy, and we'd have an abundance of a healthy workforce, and other businesses and corporations would want to move into this area and be a part of that as well.
And I'm an educator, so what I would have as an interest in that would be then Johnny can sit down in the classroom with me jumping all over the place because he's so hyperactive with all the energy he has that's not really focused. What is the purpose of using modified seeds? They're using a lot, and what percentage you think is being used?
There's with soybeans, it's gone to maybe over 90% of it's genetically modified. And what they're doing is they're modifying it so they can spray a Roundup pesticide or herbicide over that seed. That plant, that soybean, is not going to die, but any weeds that grow around it are going to be automatically killed.
I see. So the modified seed would have a component that is allergic to that pesticide. The regular seed would not have that
Correct.
the allergen, so it would not be able to resist the.
Correct.
That's interesting.
So we've been told that these genetically modified, genetically engineered seeds are going to feed the world and feed the country. Well, the problem is that if you look at our own population as a test base right now, we have huge amounts of obesity. We have huge amounts of unexplained sickness. And when the real science looks at it, it's not all coming back to genetically modified organisms, but what we don't have is any proof that they're safe. And when we look at how the crop has been engineered to actually kill an insect, why wouldn't we think after a period of time of us slowly consuming that it's not also damaging our colon area? And we have a lot of people that are mysteriously getting diverticulitis or have these inflammations of their organs. And we have to start looking at, okay, what is it that is leading up to this? And I totally believe it's in our food supply. So instead of, when we drive through Michigan and we see a cornfield, for 30 years I assumed that we were eating that many cobs of corn, or it was getting canned and we were eating it. In reality, what they're doing is they're turning it into a high fructose corn syrup and injecting that into almost every single product we have.
I see.
And the high fructose corn syrup is highly processed. It's no longer a corn sugar. It's almost become what you would, why don't you just roughly describe it as more of like a plastic base. And we're having allergic reactions to this. The body's not recognizing it. It's storing it as fat. And it's become a problem, and it needs to at least be addressed. And people at least need to hear somebody to stand up and say, hey, maybe this is an issue, and maybe if you reduce the amount of synthetic chemicals in your body, your health will come around.
I see. Is it your view that the obesity is not just only that we're eating more and things of that sort and getting fat as a result of it? You're saying that it is what we're eating that's causing some of the obesity.
It is what we're eating.
It's what we're eating, not so much the quantity of it.
No. So you can eat all the food you want and your body can still be starving to death because you're not getting the nutrients.
I see.
So if you want to think of it as when you get a hunger signal that means to eat food, it may mean I'm deficient of vitamin C. Well, if you go eat chips and drink a cola that contain no vitamin C, then your body's still going to have that same hunger signal. If you go back to those same highly processed foods, at no point are you actually stopping that hunger signal that says, I have all the proteins I need, I have all the carbohydrates I need, I have all the essential fatty acids.
I see. Even I know that because I read where as long as you're not giving the body nutrition, which is what it's calling out for, if you don't put nutrition in your body continues to call for food because it's really calling for the nutrition in the food. So the obesity can explain in that way. You were talking about the modified seed. You said 90% of the seeds are modified, which is 90% of the seeds?
With soybeans, yes.
Just soybeans?
Yeah.
Okay,
so that's growing more every single day.
And it's growing more. And they're feeding the cattle soy, right? Soy products?
They're feeding the cattle a lot of corn, primarily a lot of corn, and then soy-based as well. And what's happened is they're feeding, so cattle are designed to feed on grass. The nutrients comes from the grass that they contain. But if you take the cattle and you send it to market, you make money based on the weight of that cow. If the cow only eats grass, it's going to be slim and healthy like a person that would just eat a plant-based diet. If you feed them the corn, the cow's body is not actually designed to feed on corn, and it fattens the cow up. So the owner of the cow can make more money because the cow can put on about an additional 60 pounds on average. So it's all about following the money, which often that's what the main issues are. So if you follow the money, if you feed the cattle corn, it'll get fatter and then you make more money. But what happens is that's getting passed down to the person. So the person's no longer eating a cow that's been grass fed and the cow is healthy. The cow is now in a state of sickness.
I see.
And what we have in Washington is we have special interest groups and lobbyists that are lobbying to the USDA to say, okay, instead of us having to address this solution, let's just kind of bury any knowledge of the truth and not let this get out. This would be easier.
They can't be doing that in Washington. You're doing that in Washington?
So we have, I think on average, let's say there's about 400 lobbyists to every politician in Washington.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, this is a side point. I have 2 dogs, and you're talking about that corn. And corn is almost the first ingredient in all the dog foods. I try to buy the brand I can afford, but is that bad for like the dogs, the corn in the dog food, for example?
I would say yes. And we have standards that the veterinarians have passed that no pet food for baby animals should have less than 40 nutrients in it, roughly.
Okay.
And this is a loose standard that they put together because they were seeing when they go to the farms that it makes more sense to get the baby animals all the nutrients they need when they're young, so they can grow up to be healthy. So they took huge sweeping standards about nutrition for baby animals. However, we have a disconnect with doing the same thing for human beings. It's hard to find a baby formula that contains more than maybe 20 nutrients in them. And if you go to your shelf and look at any baby formula, one of the first ingredients is usually a corn syrup solid of some sort.
Really?
And that's not nutritious.
And they're breaking down the child's natural taste buds at an early age.
Correct.
I see them. I used to tell my students when I was teaching in public school that the only reason that child that's spitting that food out of his mouth because his taste buds are more pure doesn't go to the refrigerator and get himself a sandwiches because he can't, walk out the baby crib. But you see them spitting that baby food out because they can taste that poison in it.
Yeah.
Is what some of the doctors have said. I think it's great, Tom, that you're running on this campaign. How widespread is your campaign at this point, and what are you doing to get the word out that you're bringing something new to the table?
Well, we just became official on Tuesday the 22nd is when the petitions were due and the papers were signed.
Okay.
I gave a talk to the Genesee County Republican Party at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And from there I'm talking with you today, and tomorrow I'll be up in Saginaw at a big networking event at 7 in the morning, and then I'll be back tomorrow in Genesee County speaking to the Republican Party as well. So we're slowly gaining speed and stamina, and we're getting a lot of support from the people that we're talking about.
Is that right? Now, are you the only Republican Party candidate in this particular election?
No, there's another gentleman named Alan who is running. When I started down this path, I did not know he existed. And according to him, when he started down the path to run as well, he did not know I existed. But he's a very nice man. I've had the opportunity to meet him, and him and I will be probably speaking again tomorrow. Okay,
well, he's not running on health, nutrition, education, and agriculture. We'll tell him to get out the race.
Yeah. So I think that health and nutrition, education, and agriculture, we can talk about more about education next time, is a place to start, because what we have to start doing is providing people solutions, and we have to start providing them options. And if you want to think of it just as a simple fact that, okay, maybe I have this sickness because every single day I wake up and I do the same pattern. If nobody tells me to change my pattern, then I'll never change it and I will still be sick. And if we take that from the human body model and we put it in the 5th district, we can see those same results. If we just keep going down the same pattern, we may be allergic to this, allergic to this, allergic to this. If nobody gives us another option, another solution, or nobody inspires us. So it's all about inspiring people. I want to inspire somebody to say, yeah, I'm going to try this. And with a lot of people's health, it's as easy as just drinking water. So if you do anything, just drink water in the morning, and you will see your health just become, this essence of life that you will gain.
And
because you're not putting chemicals in, you're putting water in your system. And that's what we want to do for the 5th district. Is the 5th district runs on something, we want to give it the fuel to run.
I see, and we're talking about what, bottled water here, or can we drink the Flint River water?
We're talking about is filtered water.
Filtered
Let's
water.
Just stay with filtered water right now.
I'm just checking. Okay, well, it's been a very quick 30 minutes, Tom, and I said I was going to give you the last minute to tell the listening audience anything you wanted to know before we go off the air.
All right, well, first thing before I go up the air, I just want to tell people that I do have a website, so they can go to tomwhitmire.com, TOMWHITMIRE.com. That's going to be slowly growing as well, and you're going to find more information on what it is I stand for, what my solutions are, what other options I could provide, as well as putting some videos on there to actually inspire people and create awareness for how we can better the 5th district. Okay.
We want to thank you for coming in the studio here at FLINTTalkRadio.com. That's TomWhitmire.com, TOMWHITMIRE.com, and you can go on the website and see what else this campaign has to offer. Again, we thank you here at the studio.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Okay, I think he gave us a signal there.